Hello, my friends. Hello, and welcome once again to stately Fawn Manor, where Roger and I have returned to talk about Rocket Summer 2024, a fantastic reading event that will be taking place in July. You see, Roger and I discovered that there just aren't enough reading events going on in BookTube. We thought, gee, that's sad. How come nobody's doing reading events ever? So we decided we'd fill a void and create a new reading event for July, which is going to be all about classic science fiction. Classic science fiction. The kind of science fiction I'd be reading anyway. But here's a good excuse. It's Rocket Summer, July 2024. So this is all about classic science fiction. I took the title from the first story in this, The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. And the first story in here is Rocket Summer. That's how this volume opens up, which took place, the story takes place in January 1999. Remember back when everybody was flying off to Mars in 1999? It didn't end so well. But yeah, The Martian Chronicles, fantastic book, one of my favorite books ever. So I thought, Rocket Summer, that's what we'll call this reading event that's going to be taking place in July. And like I said, all about classic science fiction. And so I had to decide, what were the parameters? What was the time frame for classic science fiction? So I consulted with great science fiction historian Shawn D. Standfast. And we decided that classic science fiction really kind of ended when the new wave came out in the 1960s, the new wave of science fiction, which started in the mid-1960s. So as far as when the time frame starts, I'm going to say around 1895 when The Time Machine was written. I think that was written around 1895. But you can really push it all the way back to Frankenstein if you want to. That would be fine. And I'm going to end it right around 1970, even though that's a little late. Because, like I said, by the mid-1960s, that's when the new wave was happening. And it really changed science fiction after that. But 1970 just seems such a neat stopping point. We're going to stop there. And I'm going to divide it up into 4 weeks like we do with these sorts of reading events. Week 1 is going to be science fiction written from around 1895 or before, if you want it to be, all the way up through 1939. So that's going to be week 1. That's a lot of stuff you could be reading. You could read, for example, The War of the Worlds, one of the greatest and most influential science fiction novels of all time by H.G. Wells. Here it is in an easy eye edition. Remarkably, all in one piece with all the pages still inside. The War of the Worlds. This was a magnificent novel, and if you've never read it, if you've never read this book, hey, the first week of July would be a great time to read this book. So this is something you could read, or you could read one of my favorite books of all time, A Princess of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs. This would qualify. A Princess of Mars, this is another very influential science fiction novel, which is also practically fantasy and adventure. It's great. This book is amazing and fun. So, A Princess of Mars, good time to read this if you've never read it. Or, like I said, this is going all the way up through 1939. So you could read Who Goes There, for example, the great science fiction story that was the basis for The Thing. Actually, both science fiction movies of The Thing. Actually, there were 3 of them, but only 2 of them were good. Who Goes There by John W. Campbell Jr. This volume actually has a collection of stories all from the 1930s by John W. Campbell. But Who Goes There is definitely a story that if you've never read it, it's well worth reading. So now is your chance. In the first week of Rocket Summer, you could do that. And the second week is going to be the 1940s. So the 1940s. And I just grabbed this. This is Assignment in Eternity. So this is something you could read. You could read anything from the 1940s if it's science fiction. This is Robert A. Heinlein's Assignment in Eternity, which is a collection of stories all written in the 1940s. I assume, I haven't actually read this volume yet, but I probably will in July, just to find out what's going on with this story, because it's like, hey, this guy's just running in fear, grasping his space dildo. Maybe people are trying to steal his space dildo. Maybe it's an advanced form of technology that everybody wants. Who knows? I will find out in July. So there you go. Assignment in Eternity. Robert Heinlein. So week 2, the 1940s. Week 3 is the 1950s. And I grabbed this by Clifford D. Simak. Worlds Without End. This is a collection of stories from the 1950s. There were a lot of science fiction books and stories that came out in the 1950s. And third week of Rocket Summer is a perfect time to catch up with them, including this one, Simak's Worlds Without End. Now, remember, this is me. I'm not a literary snob of any kind. So feel free to also catch up on your EC Comics 1950s science fiction comic books. You know, this is a perfect time because EC Comics did some amazing, amazing science fiction comic books. And, you know, this would be a perfect chance to catch up with this stuff. This stuff was good. So, yeah, the 1950s is week number 3. Our final week is the 1960s. Now, remember, this is the decade when everything changed, but there was still classic science fiction written, and anything basically from the 1960s you could read, including Rogue Moon by Aldous Budrys. I've heard good things about this book. This was published in 1960, I think. Let me look, because I could be wrong. Yes, it was published in 1960, and I hear this is really, really good. I've seen the Outlaw Bookseller talk about this, I think. I think he did a video on this book. So this would be a good option, or Cordwainer Smith's Quest of the Three Worlds. Basically anything from the 1960s would do. If you have any old 1960s science fiction magazines hanging out, this would be a good time. There's a rocket ship for Rocket Summer. I got this from Steve Donahue. Steve Donahue gave me this. This is from 1964. So, you know, you got any of these lying around, anything science fiction from that time period will count. So there you go. Rocket Summer, it's going to be amazing. A fantastic time to catch up with classic science fiction. I will talk more about it when it comes closer, but I just thought, BookTube, a lot of us plan our reading way in advance, because there are 1 or 2 BookTube events that you might want to take part. There are 1 or 2 of them out there that you might want to take part in. And fortunately with science fiction, a lot of this classic science fiction was pretty short. So, it's easy to slip these in there, and it'll be a fun event to take part in, I think. Okay, guys, I will shut up now. I will catch you next time.